The gospel lesson this morning comes from the Gospel of John in the 6th chapter. This is a familiar passage about Jesus being the bread of life. Let us listen for God's word. Once the crowd realized that neither Jesus nor his disciples were there, they got into the boats and went to Capernaum in search of Jesus. When they found him on the other side of the lake, they asked him, "Rabbi, when did you get here?" Jesus answered, "Very truly I tell you, you are looking for me, not because you saw the signs I performed, but because you ate the loaves and had your fill. Do not work for food that spoils, but for food that endures to eternal life, which the Son of Man will give you. For on him God the Father has placed his seal of approval." Then they asked him, "What must we do to do the works God requires?" Jesus answered, "The work of God is this, to believe in the one he has sent." So they asked him, "What sign then will you give that we may see it and believe you? What will you do? Our ancestors ate the manna in the wilderness, as it is written, he gave them bread from heaven to eat." Jesus said to them, "Very truly I tell you, it is not Moses who has given you the bread from heaven, but it is my Father who gives you the true bread from heaven. For the bread of God is the bread that comes down from heaven and gives life to the world." "Sir," they said, "always give us this bread." Then Jesus declared, "I am the bread of life. Whoever comes to me will never go hungry, and whoever believes in me will never be thirsty. But as I told you, you have seen me, and still you do not believe." This is the gospel of the Lord. Thanks be to God. It is told of an ancient king who presented his court jester with a beautiful wand. And he told the jester, "I give you this trophy to symbolize your status as the greatest fool in the kingdom. And you are to keep it until you can give it to a greater fool than yourself." Well, the court jester good-naturedly accepted the beautiful wand. Sometime later, the king was dying and asked to see the jester. The jester came in. The king told the jester that he wanted to say goodbye because he was going on a long, long journey that was going to last forever. And the jester asked the king what he had done to prepare for this great trip. And the king said, "Well, really, I haven't done anything. See, I really don't know exactly what to expect from this long journey, so I just decided there was just nothing to be done." To which the jester said, "Well, then you take this wand, for you are the biggest fool of all." Nothing to be done to prepare. Living wisely means looking ahead. Living wisely means acknowledging that We are pilgrims on God's earth, and we are only passing through. It means pointing oneself in the direction of the source of life, acknowledging one's dependence on God, not only for life, but for the way of life. It means developing a lifestyle which in itself is an act of faith in God's promise of ultimate, total fulfillment when that time comes, when our tourist season of life is ended. We tend to think of eternal life as something that's out there. That's out there in the future. Something out there in the afterlife. But that isn't what we heard this morning. That is not what Jesus says. Yes, eternal life obviously has a future reference. But throughout the Gospels, eternal life is referred to as a quality of life, not a dimension of life. A quality of life, not a dimension. There was a little boy, and he ran into the house, and he burst into the family room, and he yelled, "Mom, Dad, guess what? We found this great, big, ugly lizard behind the garage, and we hit him with a board, and then we zapped him with a rock, and then we dumped him in a pail of water." And it was at that point the little boy froze because he saw the church's pastor sitting there talking to his mom and dad. Was kind of looking at him disapprovingly, shaking his head. And then in a very somber voice, the boy said, "Oh, of course, that was until the Lord called the lizard home." Eternal life is referred to as a quality of life, not a dimension of life. To know God, to love God, to be in union with God, to be in harmony with God's life. This is the eternal life that we experience right now. To know God in this way, experiencing God's presence in this way, is to experience the eternal quality of life in the present. Like a grain of wheat, we are in the process of becoming, of breaking out, of expanding, of growing, of flowering into the fullness of life, surrendering ourselves to the fulfillment of God's grand design. Now, and I hope you do not hear me saying that that cruelty that was inflicted on the poor lizard was part of God's grand design. It wasn't, and that is an entirely different sermon. However, each of us has the potential and the opportunity to act accordingly and to know eternal life right now. To act accordingly is to love all of our sisters and brothers who have been planted here because God has loved them first. There was a young man who was sent out to have his employer's grandfather clock repaired. So he fixed his arms around the big 4-foot clock, and he went off down the street, and he slowly made his way down the street, and it was a crowded street. His vision was partially blocked by the big clock that he was holding in his arms, and so he accidentally ran into a woman. He knocked her down on the sidewalk. Fortunately, she wasn't hurt. She quickly got up to her feet, and then she said to the young man who was still there clutching the great big grandfather clock, she said, "Young man, can't you just wear a wristwatch like everybody else?" You know, sometimes in our daily living, we carry around a lot of baggage from past experiences which get in our way of seeing the bigger picture. Sometimes it makes it difficult for us to see beyond our own needs and wants and desires. We become like those Israelites, demanding our hunger to be filled, and this makes it difficult to experience the eternal life in the here and now. As living beings, We are required to consume food and water in order to survive. Yet in today's gospel, we hear more. There is a spiritual part of the human being that also cries out in hunger. Jesus says, do not work for food that cannot last, but work for food that endures to eternal life. I think what Jesus is talking about here is our expectations. The biggest fool of all centers his or her hope for the good life on food that cannot last, self-indulging, self-gratifying, passing pleasures, and those creature comforts. It is often we who push that cross back out of sight. It is we who give the impression that the cross's proper place is in the shadows of stained glass windows. And we do this as we busy ourselves with supposed matters of consequence. We must never stop asking ourselves if we are coming ever closer to where Christ's people ought to be. Is our search for this thing called happiness based on our own definition of that word, or on Christ's definition of happiness? Are we searching in the wrong places? A philosopher once said that the whole world is on a mad quest for security and happiness. An oil tycoon said, I thought money could buy happiness, but the millions I've spent looking for it hasn't produced it. A superstar entertainer said, I have fame and beauty, glamour, and just about everything money can buy. I'm miserable. An heir of a large family fortune said, I'm on top of the social ladder, but I'm lonely and depressed. An elder congressperson said, I'm an old man for whom life has lost all meaning, and as I prepare to leap into the unknown, I am without hope. When we allow ourselves to be victimized by our materialistic world, we plunge headlong into the mad quest for happiness, and when we become persons of greed and envy and self-seeking, the more we get, the less contented we are with life. The wisest of all centers his or her hope for the good life on the food that endures to eternal life. The love of God, as revealed in the person of Jesus Christ, the bread of life, that is where our thoughts are to be focused. In John's Gospel, the unique Greek phrase that speaks of eternal life, aionion zoon, actually means life plus. Not just mere existence, not just inhaling and exhaling, not just minimum daily requirements, not just meandering around, but life plus. Life plus the divine spark. Life plus the sacred energy. Life plus the experience of God's presence. Life plus the expectations of enduring love. A little girl was distraught because her cat had died. And her mother was trying to console the little girl and soothingly told the little girl that it was all going to be okay because Tabby was now in heaven with God. And the little girl kind of sniffled. She looked at her mother and she goes, what does God want with a dead cat? We are not frozen in a holding pattern until the second coming of Christ. God's realm is even now. Eternal life is ours even now. God intrudes into history in our midst even now. Therefore, we continue to work for the food that endures to eternal life. We live now in the total conviction that nothing in all creation can separate us from God's love. Jesus says the power of God conquers death and brings us to complete wholeness of life. He lifts up our role in helping to move God's grand design to fruition. Throughout the Gospels, Jesus is telling us that when we become ready, willing, and able to acknowledge how generous God has been in giving himself to us in Jesus Christ, we simultaneously become ready, willing, and able to give generously of ourselves to others. And through this kind of preparation for our journey into the afterlife, we nourish our faith in God's promise of eternal happiness. Jesus has told us what happiness is. It's about humility, being pure in heart, about being meek. Happiness is relying on God's word on how to become a fulfilled human being. It's about working for peace and showing mercy to others, understanding, empathy, compassion, caring. Happiness is about love. And happiness is where the action is, God's divine action. And God's action is revealed in the commonplace of everyday life. Recently, I was traveling along a long, barren countryside road, and a couple of times I came across this vulture-type bird. I think it's called a turkey buzzard. And they were congregated right there in the middle of the road, and they were devouring some poor creature that wasn't quick enough to get out of the way of a vehicle. And just moments before my car closed in on their feeding frenzy, they flew off over on the side of the road, only to return quickly to their activity. I could see them in my rearview mirror. They were right back in the middle of the road. You know, this eerie birds spending their lives searching for the carcasses of dead animals. On the other hand, I'm fascinated by the presence and the movement of hummingbirds. I have little hummingbird feeders outside of my living room window. And these things, they just flit around back and forth and chase each other back and forth and all around the flowers. And from these feeders, I think these little birds consume more sugar in one day than I probably consume in 2 weeks. You know, hummingbirds, they're just this bundle of energy, just this bundle of energy. They're so busy out there taking care of business. Now, think about the mental images. These two very different types of birds. Think of the images, the different images they create in our minds. Think about the fact that each of them is seeking the same thing, just very different from each other. It's the same for us. We can go through life like a vulture, like a turkey buzzard, demanding our needs to be met, taking actions which are aggressive, standing on the side as the world goes by. We can even pick until we destroy or consume. Or, like the hummingbird, we could be a bundle of energy, seeing ways to care for our world and inhabitants and one another, looking for the good in people, looking for the good in situations, giving joy. I believe it is true that what we find in life is what we are really looking for. Our expectations of life will determine ultimately our realization of life. Eternal life is ours now. It is a quality of life, not a dimension. We have the choice of how we want to live our lives. God gives us that freedom of choice. May God continue to work in our lives and within this community of faith to show the way to experience the eternal quality of life. Not just today, but tomorrow and tomorrow and tomorrow. Amen. Amen.